Hi, Facebook live stream listeners and watchers, I guess, too. Welcome to Backstage with Change It Up Radio with Paula Shaw. I'm so delighted you're here today. And remember now, you're backstage. So what you're seeing here is not like a perfect live stream performance. You're seeing the nuts and bolts of how we actually do a pre-recorded radio show. And today on this show, we will be talking with my daughter, Erin Shaw. Erin, would you like to say hi?
Hi, everyone.
And she'll be with us in just a little bit. But we're going to be talking about anxiety. And it's a problem that plagues nearly half of the population, a huge percentage of the population. So stick around, stay with us. There's a lot of great information coming your way. So now we're going to get ready and actually start the radio show. All righty. Okay, Todd.
Ready to go.
All right, here we go. Welcome to Change It Up with Paula Shaw. So delighted to have you here with us today. And so glad that you decided to change it up in your own life. This is a show for everyday men and women just like you and me, helping us get out of our ruts and embrace change, because we all know that all growth happens outside of our comfort zones. We hate being outside of our comfort zones, but that's where the growth really starts. So I think if we can all learn to embrace change, because it's a constant, it's the one thing we know is going to happen. There's going to be change whether we like it or not. So let's embrace it together and have some fun. Today, we're talking about anxiety. And this is a huge issue in our country. It's affecting right now, the statistics tell us, 40 million adults in the United States, age 18 or older. Anxiety disorders are actually highly treatable, but only 36.9% of those suffering receive any kind of treatment. People with anxiety disorder are 3 to 5 times more likely to go to the doctor and 6 times more likely to be hospitalized for psychiatric disorders. It's a huge issue. Anxiety disorders develop from a complex set of factors, including genetics, I didn't actually know that one myself, brain chemistry, personality, and life events. So it can be any one of those or a combination of all of the above that can create anxiety. Anxiety very often comes coupled with depression. Nearly half of those people who are diagnosed with depression also have anxiety. Now, a lot of people don't realize that anxiety comes in many flavors, so to speak. There are many faces of anxiety. And in my private practice, working with people that are going through life transitions, you can imagine that I see a huge number of people who are dealing with anxiety. Because think about it. What happens when some unexpected life transition happens, whether it's a death, a divorce, perhaps a health diagnosis that's negative? There are all sorts of things that put us through life transitions. Even the good things that happen, like marriage or your child going away to college, a lot of those really fun and what we think of as positive events can also cause anxiety, because whenever we're put in the position of dealing with the unknown, we tend to get anxious. So there's something called GAD, G-A-D, which stands for Generalized Anxiety Disorder, and 6.8 million adults have generalized anxiety disorder, so they can be anxious about a variety of things. Women are twice as likely to be affected as men. We have panic disorder, which my daughter Erin will be talking about in a little bit, and that affects 6 million adults in this country, or 2.7% of the population. And then there's social anxiety disorder, which, again, creates anxiety for people when they need to be or have to be in social situations. And we're not just talking about the oh so famous fear of public speaking. We're talking about any kind of social situation. In a show a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the huge problem that we have in our country right now with social isolation. So a lot of people are losing their skills at being with other people. And by the way, humans are actually herding mammals. We do best when we are running with the herd. That's how we're wired. So if we're not getting that time with other people, or if we avoid other people because we're suffering from SAD, social anxiety disorder, then we're in trouble on many levels because we're losing that experience that actually gives us a feeling of well-being, actually gives us a sense of meaning and purpose in life, and those warm, fuzzy moments that we get to have when we're dealing with other humans. So we have a real problem when social anxiety disorder or any of the above anxiety disorders are present. And according to the World Health Organization, this is not just an American problem, everybody. 1 in 13 people globally, 1 in 13 suffers from anxiety. The World Health Organization reports that anxiety disorders are the most common mental disorders worldwide, with specific phobias, major depressive disorder, and social phobia being the most common anxiety disorders. So phobias are one thing we didn't talk about much, but that's something that we can also talk about a little bit with Erin, because she knows what it's like to have a phobia of getting in an airplane and leaving the earth, which many people do. I know a lot of people who don't even travel because getting in that airplane is too big of an ordeal for them to deal with. And another real problem that's created with anxieties and the different anxiety disorders is people don't sleep well. 42% of Americans say that they suffer with sleeplessness because of anxiety. And I don't know about any of you ladies who ever had children and maybe remember those first few months when a full night's sleep is sort of like a search for the Holy Grail. But I remember it really well. And I'm usually a pretty easygoing person. But I can remember specifically sitting with my mother and my husband, and it was after dinner, and they both started kind of yawning and talking about how tired they were. And my baby, who you're about to meet in a few minutes, was waking up every 3 hours. So I went from pleasant person to mega bitch in about a New York minute, and was just like ready to slap both of them and scream, "You have no idea what tired is." And that was truly what I was feeling, because when you don't get sleep, you know, all the healing and the restorative functions that the body goes through during sleep aren't happening to you well. And I know there are a lot of ladies out there that are relating to what I'm talking about right now. So sleeplessness is a real problem. It makes it very difficult to function fully at work the next day. It makes it really hard to stay pleasant because we just tend to be irritable and short-tempered when we aren't getting enough sleep. So there are many, many pieces to this anxiety puzzle, and it's all too common. So I thought this is an important thing to talk about today, because I know when I see a client who's suffering with anxiety, their world just has a dark cloud hanging over it. And it's not something that they kind of step in and out of either. There's sometimes like this just all-pervasive feeling of doom and gloom. It makes it extremely difficult to function at all. If they go into ruminating anxiety, they may be second-guessing every decision they've made for the last 2, 5, 10 years. And that's a really hellish situation, because we all do things every day that we kind of wish we didn't. But when that's where you're focusing and that's where you're dwelling, it makes it really particularly difficult to have any kind of an optimistic, positive attitude or feel good about life or hopeful. It's pretty tough to deal with all of the everyday things that are happening to all of us if we don't have some sense of hope, if we don't believe that, okay, today kind of sucks, but tomorrow will be better. We need to be able to go there. We need to be able to feel that something we do can shift this reality that we're in when it's not feeling good. Obviously, if you're having a great day, you want that to last forever, but if you have anxiety, you're worried that it's not going to last forever, and you know that tomorrow might suck. And that's the truth of it. It's this ongoing cycle that feels like it can come on unexpectedly in the form of panic attacks. It can feel like it's never going to end. Sort of like the title of my book. My book is about grief, but one of the aspects of grief can be anxiety, for sure, especially if someone that you love, who you counted on, that made you feel safe in the world, died. Then you may just have anxiety about what's going to happen tomorrow. How will I ever feel safe again? How will I do this? How will I do that? I was listening to a commercial on the way driving into the studio this morning, and a woman was saying, after my husband died, I worried constantly, how would I pay the mortgage? What would happen to my children? All of these various things can create anxiety. And in my daughter, it was kind of a whole different flavor. I mean, it was a lot of the things that we've talked about here, but I think that you're going to find two things in what she's going to share in the next segment. One, some interesting details about how she experienced anxiety that you may not realize are anxiety, because as I said, it has so many different faces. Sometimes a person's behavior may look negative and Chicken Little, like, the sky is falling. But what's really going on is they're truly suffering anxiety and worrying about things in a very real way. So stick around. In just a moment, I'm going to have the delight of introducing you to Erin Shaw, my daughter, and talking more about this topic of the angst of anxiety. We'll be right back. Okay, Ms. Shaw, are you ready?
Sure am.
Okay.
I have no anxiety.
Darn. Okay, you're going to have to make something up. She's just kidding, Facebook people, but actually it's true. She's on the other side of it, and that's an exciting part of the story. So we are just about to start this segment. All right. Here, let me hit the clock here.
Okay.
And we have 11 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yep, 11:39.
Okie doke. Here we go. And welcome back to Change It Up with Paula Shaw, being brought to you by Sherry Blair, the financial consultant whose whole goal is to empower women to grow beautiful financial futures. You can reach her at 619-997-0416 or at sherryblair.com. That's spelled CHERIBLAIR.com. And in this segment now, we are going to be talking to Erin Shaw. Erin is the author of the novel Party Girl, and she's got an upcoming one called Have Baggage Will Travel. I love that. She's an entrepreneur. She has a business called New York Princess Party that is still operating in New York. She's a musician and a singer with a band called That Vibe. And she's also co-host with me of a podcast called Bridges, which is a mother-daughter multi-generational view of trending topics. So I hope you'll look for us also on Bridges, which is on SoundCloud and iTunes. All right. Hello, my darling daughter. How are you?
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'd like to say first my sincere apologies for giving you anxiety when I was a baby.
Thank you.
Waking you up every few hours on the tail of Mother's Day. That's very appropriate.
Well, you made up for it by being the cutest child and the easiest one to birth. Erin was born at 5 pounds, and so it was really kind of a cakewalk, though I didn't realize that at the time. I only learned that lesson when her brother, who was a couple of pounds bigger, was born, and then I realized how wonderful she was, coming at only 5 pounds.
But we won't throw him under the bus.
No, we won't throw him under the bus, because he did turn out to be a good guy. So, sweetheart, this whole issue of anxiety, and I want to share with our listeners, I knew a little bit about Erin's anxiety, but I really didn't know the full extent of it myself until a couple of years ago when she put a post on Facebook telling her story. I knew about her initial panic attack, what happened, but then we got some help, and I thought we were on the other side of it. So tell them a little bit about your story with this, Erin.
Sure. Well, the very first time I had a small panic attack was in high school, and it was during a stressful time of my senior year. Anxiety disorders are often triggered by stressful events in life. And
there had just been a death of a dear friend, as I recall.
Yeah,
right?
A friend from high school had been killed in a car accident, and, you know, as most 17-year-olds do, I just sort of thought I was fine and moving on with my life. And I mean, clearly I felt bad about it, but, you know, it wasn't insurmountable in my mind. And then one day I was just driving along, and all of a sudden I couldn't breathe, and my chest felt like it was caving in, and I didn't know what it was, so I assumed I was having a heart attack.
As most people do.
Right, and I called my dad, and he came in and picked me up. We ditched my car wherever I was, and he raced me to the pediatrician's office, and I got in there, and she started talking to me and started asking me about what was going on. I kind of started telling her. All of a sudden, I was pretty calm, and she was like, I think you just had an anxiety attack. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was the first time.
Wow.
And then I had another one in college while I was in Denver on choir tour, and I was actually mid-performance with my choir and had a panic attack while I was on the stage and had to run off the stage and kind of catch my breath. And again, I didn't really know what was going on.
Was it like that first one? Did you feel like the tightness in your chest and all that?
Yeah, my symptoms were always like tightness in the chest. It felt like there was, like a elephant sitting on me. Short of breath. I would get very sweaty palms. Very attractive, by the way. I don't know why I didn't have more boyfriends at this time, but anyway.
Yeah, those sweaty palms make it really hard to hold hands.
Yeah, like really, really sexy. Anyway, and so it was a similar thing. And then I actually then had one a couple weeks later. Again, I was driving home from work, and I started thinking about the one I had in Colorado, and that triggered another one. So
wait a second. Did you say thinking about the one you'd had triggered another one?
Like it just exactly, like just kind of remembering what I had felt kind of triggered another one. And so I think you and I have talked about how anxiety attacks can kind of be like self-perpetuating. Like there can be a snowball effect where the fear, the anxiety that you're going to have an anxiety attack can often create one and make it worse.
And sometimes certain places or things, smells will trigger people because they had one in that kind of a place before.
Yeah,
like
I never had that experience, but I've heard of that,
Yeah, I had a client who had her first panic attack in a hospital where there were shiny green linoleum floors. So anytime she was around shiny green linoleum floors, which fortunately we don't see very often these days.
Yeah, luckily those are kind of not in vogue anymore for her.
The hospitals are much better decorated than they used to be. But anyway, that was always a danger zone for her.
It's funny you say that because after I had, my 3 biggest panic attacks I had in my youth, I would say, my late teens, early 20s, were while driving and while on stage. And so for years, those became the things that I was most afraid to do. So I graduated from college and I moved to New York City. And, as you know, my plan was to go do Broadway theater.
Yep.
And I got there and I couldn't actually go. Like, I couldn't audition. I was too terrified. And I wasn't afraid that I wouldn't book a gig. I was worried I would, because I knew I was, talented. And I was afraid I would book something and then I would have the responsibility to carry a show or be in an ensemble of a show. And then what would happen if I had a panic attack on stage? Then I would be responsible for, like, screwing up the whole performance. So I wasn't really driving much when I was in New York, and that was kind of nice because I didn't like driving. For years, I would only drive in the right lane on the freeway because I was afraid that I would have to pull over right away. And it wasn't until 2013 when I made myself go on a cross-country road trip alone that I sort of got over that. I kind of, what do they call it when you put yourself through the sensation over and over again?
Desensitization. Yeah, desensitization's treatment, which is
or whatever. Yeah,
difficult.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
So
was that when you went to the South, or when you did that tour?
Yeah, that was when I went through the South. Yeah, that was many years after this New York adventure. But once I was in New York for 2 months, and then my dad died, and as you know, and that then kind of like made everything worse, because then there was just all these other like family pieces we were all picking up and taking care of, and so that made it very hard for me to not feel immensely guilty for being far away, kind of trying to do my own, like, create my own path. Like, I felt guilty for leaving you guys here in California and me being across, on the other side of the country. So there was just a lot kind of going on at that time.
And you mentioned,
a few years.
When you and I were talking about this first, you mentioned that even as a small child, you sort of felt responsible for me, for my happiness.
Yeah.
If Dad yelled at me or something, it worried you, right? So
yeah, I was an anxious kid, and I think anytime anyone was angry or there was any argument, even if they were normal adult arguments, most children don't know that, at a young age, that it isn't like the sky is falling, as you said. Yeah, I remember being a very anxious kid. I used to sleep with a flashlight because I was worried there would be like an earthquake or a fire while I was asleep. Like, very much a control freak. Like, oh my God, if I'm unconscious, I won't be able to, like, protect everyone or myself. So for some reason, I thought my, like, play school flashlight would definitely take care of that for me. And placebo effect, I was able to sleep, because as you mentioned, sleeping is a big part of anxiety. I actually don't have any problem sleeping. I love sleeping. I woke up at 9:45 this morning.
Hallelujah. Well, we don't want you to have that problem. But, in the first segment, I was saying that anxiety disorders develop from a complex set of factors, including genetics, brain chemistry, personality, and life events. So you kind of have a lot of those. Yeah, almost all of the above. And this sense of
family, there's anxiety with our relatives, not your side, but Dad's side. There are other, I have, aunts and cousins who experience anxiety too. So, it could be genetic as well.
Yeah. And I think I just went out of my head what I was just going to say about another contributing factor. But anyway, I think we've looked at most of those. Oh, I would know what I was going to say. And as far as personality, this kind of sense of over-responsibility that you had, like worrying about me and about Casey, your brother, and all of that. Not everybody worries like that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
So
some kids do, some kids don't. Just depends, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, what we're talking about, genetics and personality has a big impact. So then you ended up moving to New Orleans, and did that help or did that make things worse?
So I went on this long cross-country road trip in 2013, and I went all through the South, Texas, Louisiana, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, New Mexico, Arizona, everywhere. And, of course, that's what you always want to do in August, right, is be in the most humid, hot place in the country.
I couldn't believe
I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. But, I had all these friends I had met over the previous years that were living there, and I put this little trip together. I was in between jobs, and I thought, I'm going to just go for it. And a bunch of my friends had, gotten married, and I had gone through a breakup, and I was just like, I got to get out of here. And that's the inspiration for my second novel, Have Baggage Will Travel, is actually based on that experience, but highly fictionalized, as with my first novel as well. But yeah, and I should have mentioned actually that when I couldn't audition in New York, the gift of sort of like letting go of that dream temporarily was I discovered writing. And I mean, I had always loved writing in school and everything, but I started writing. I started, working in journalism and magazines and blogging, and then I wrote this novel, Party Girl, a modern fairy tale, which was loosely based on my starting a business in New York, which is also a side product of being anxious, which I just started a business rather than going to auditions. I would go do Princess Party.
Let's hang on for just a moment, darling. Let's pick up with that sometimes we can use our anxiety to create. We'll do that right after the break. We'll be right back. Okay, if you're ready to keep rolling, I am.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So let's just start this clock over. And we'll pick up right there with, because I think that's a great plus from it. And then let's go into a little bit of, how New Orleans impacted you, and then some things that started helping.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Well, welcome back to Change It Up with Paula Shaw, being brought to you by Sherry Blair, the financial consultant who empowers women to grow beautiful financial futures. Sherry can be reached at 619-997-0416. Let her help you grow your financial future to be a thing of beauty. She's also available at sherryblair.com, spelled CHERIBLAIR.com. All right. In our last segment, we were talking with my daughter, Erin Shaw, who is the author of the novel Party Girl. She's an entrepreneur, has a business in New York called New York Princess Parties, also a singer with a band called That Vibe, and the co-host of a podcast called Bridges with yours truly. So, Erin, we were just talking about how sometimes we can use anxiety in a positive way, and you were about to talk about the evolution of your business in New York.
Yeah. So in the last segment, we were talking about how, I had developed panic disorder in college, or starting a little bit at the end of high school and into college. And then I had some pretty major panic attacks while driving and while on stage. And so those were the two things that became the most challenging to me, for fear that they would trigger an additional panic attack, which, by the way, for anyone who's never experienced a full-blown panic attack, it's really terrifying. I mean, imagine feeling like you're passing out, dying, and having a heart attack all at one time.
Yeah.
But it's without warning, and you're otherwise healthy and completely unexpected. So it's really scary. And once you learn how to either curb a panic attack or prevent it by using either mindfulness techniques or, whatever other things are out there, which we'll talk about, I think, in the last segment, it can leave you feeling really powerless. So a lot of times you create situations for yourself where you're not going to have anxiety, or it can have a different effect where you become very, very organized and very controlled and very, hypervigilant about stimuli and that sort of thing. So for me, it sort of, I became like a really great businesswoman. I just had everything lined up very neatly. And so when I couldn't go to auditions in New York because I was so afraid I would book a job and then, ruin the performance by having panic attack during the show, I started a business which was called New York Princess Party. I had done some princess parties in California in college, but this was the business became really big in New York. And my boss at the time was a children's editor at Daily Candy, which was a children's publication and very well known. And she wrote up the company, and I had this huge boom of business, and the company's still in existence today. So, I just sort of became a businesswoman. And then after that sort of was kind of moving smoothly, I started getting really into writing as well. So I started blogging, like food blogging originally. And I think it was probably because I saw Julie and Julia, and I was like, I want to do that. And so I just sort of did it, which was kind of what I do in life. Like, I see things, and I'm like, ooh, me, and then I just do it. So
now I've got a question.
Brave or foolish.
I need to stop you and ask a question. So
Yeah.
you had this anxiety about performing. Was that just on a stage because you performed for the children at the parties? Was that
Yeah, but I always felt like a birthday party was like a safe space because it was just a captive audience that like wanted to believe in magic, and I don't know, for whatever reason it felt different. Like I don't know.
But I think it's
maybe
important to mention that one of the ways people handle anxiety that can really limit their lives is to be avoidant of certain situations, like you were of the stage, when it was really your passion to be able to sing and perform on the stage.
Yeah, and that was something that it took many years for me to sort of, come back to. Mm-hmm. And I actually advocate for sometimes taking a break from your passions if they become a burden, whether it's because of overwork or anxiety or whatever it is. Like, I don't actually have any regret, if that makes sense, because I discovered all these other talents and things I enjoyed doing, and writing and starting this business are still two things that I engage in now. So to me, this chapter in my life just sort of expanded my interests. So I think that was a positive thing. But there were two things I was very adamant about with anxiety. Number one was I never wanted to take medication. And that was a personal choice. I have no judgments on that. For some people, medication, when supervised by, a highly trained professional, can be the difference between living and existing, and I wanted to work to eventually get back to doing the things that I feared. So doing that road trip was my way of saying enough is enough. Like, you gotta get over this fear of driving in the left lane of the freeway, because you need to be able to do that. So we're gonna just desensitize you over and over until this, or whatever, however you would say that. We're going to expose your therapy. That was called. We're going to expose you to this over and over and over and over again until it's not fearful.
But it was self-inflicted. That was really brave. Really brave.
Well, so then I ended up in New Orleans because I had gone there a couple times during that year, and I just fell in love with the city, and it was so beautiful and fun and filled with music and food, which were like all my favorite things. And I think I was drawn to it because it was such a music-centric place, and there was a part of me, like, deep inside that was really yearning to come back to that. And I ended up taking a job as a music teacher, and just by pure fate, I found this woman, Carla Waterfield, on Google, and we happened to both have degrees from Chapman University in the vocal music department. We'd had similar teachers, but 18 years apart. So I found her in New Orleans by chance, and she had this beautiful children's music program called Music Artin, and she wasn't looking for another teacher, but she met with me because she knew we had gone to the same school, and we just like instantly fell in love with each other. She trained me, and I started teaching music. So then I was sort of performing, but also teaching, and with children. So it was this kind of perfect little pinnacle of all the things I had done prior were kind of coming together. And Carla encouraged me to jump in with her singing group, which was called the Siren Sisters of New Orleans, and it was an a cappella kind of jazzy women's group that was a part of the Sirens of New Orleans Mardi Gras crew.
So when I interruption, please, just a moment. When I saw you perform with them, the time when I thought you knocked the socks off that song, was that your first time actually in a performing situation since?
Yeah.
Oh my God! And you were amazing. Okay, go on.
I was terrified, but it went well. Yeah.
Incredible.
But anyway, so that being a part of that group was, I think, the tipping point, because I was surrounded by these like 12 amazing women who are still incredible friends, even now that I'm back in LA. We were performing for charity events, which was so like touching to me. It kind of took, when you perform for charity, but you have performance anxiety, and you realize that like the people who you're singing for have it so much worse than you, or the organization you're benefiting, like, could be people who are dealing with illnesses and stuff. All of a sudden, my problems seemed so small by comparison.
Wow.
And I felt like I was contributing, and so it made me feel more brave. And that sort of was another kind of exposure therapy. And then I did a play with the NOLA Project. I was invited by them to jump in a play, and I hadn't done a play in years. And so all these things, like New Orleans was like this magical time where all these things came together for me to sort of like gently take my hand and like help me back to feeling comfortable on stage. And after those years in New Orleans, I've never felt anxious driving or performing. It's gone.
And you did do some therapy work while you were there, but as you were mentioning to me yesterday, you didn't actually work specifically on the anxiety. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did. I talked to the therapist for a little bit, and I was predominantly dealing with it I was in a bad relationship, and I was seeking some guidance on that. And, she and I talked a lot about that. We talked a bit about my family history and that sort of thing. She helped me learn to establish some boundaries, even with people I love, because there was a part of my personality who, that likes to come to people's rescue, and she kind of helped me see that wasn't benefiting anyone, including me.
It used to be kind of nice for me, though.
Yeah, I know.
Just kidding. Especially when I get into a techie crisis.
Yeah,
I liked it when IT was open more.
Yeah, IT has limited hours now, technical support. But, just established, and I started doing, I should have mentioned this too, because we should talk about ways you can limit anxiety or make it better. So once I got to New York, I completely cut caffeine, because for some people, caffeine can trigger anxiety. So I completely cut caffeine, and I started doing yoga. That sounds so cliche, but oh my God, it was so helpful for me, just to take that hour to just breathe. Also, I went from New York City, which is probably the most anxiety-inducing city in this country, to New Orleans, Louisiana, which is the most chill. Most people are drunk all the time.
It is legal, by the way, folks, to carry your cocktails down the street.
Yeah, you can carry your drinks around. But just the culture of New Orleans is very much about living in the moment and enjoying life. I mean, they do second lines and they dance after funerals, because the idea being that you never know when your time is going to come, and you need to enjoy every moment. So New Orleans is really a city that takes staying in the moment to a whole new level. And I actually think that was really good for me, to be in a city that did not expect me to hustle all the time, but just kind of like was allowing me to just be and to live and enjoy music and food and, drinks and people and children that I was teaching, and it was just lovely. It was a lovely time. So I'm very grateful to that city. A lot of people haven't been down there, and I highly, highly recommend it. It is so, I took you to Mardi Gras, which you thought it was going to be the stereotype of Mardi Gras, and it so is, right?
I was blown away by what a family-oriented city it actually is. It's not what we think of as, all the craziness that goes on in the French Quarter during Mardi Gras.
It's not Bourbon Street.
It's not.
Facet.
And Erin, let's talk a little bit more, as soon as we come back from the break, about some of the helpful things that people can do if they are suffering with this terrible thing called anxiety. So we'll be right back. All right. If you're ready, let's just launch right into some of the good things we can do. I've got some I want to talk about, too.
Okay. Do you want me to list mine first and then let you kind of share yours and close out that way?
Yep.
Okay, when we first come back from the break, I want to just briefly mention the band, plug and talk about the band information.
Absolutely.
And then we'll go into that.
So you know what, we can lead into it by talking about how you're on the other side of it now, and just this week you had this great experience and blah blah blah, and then we can talk about some of the things people can do that are helpful. How about that?
Great. Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Just a minute. Let me set the clock. And here we go. Welcome back to Change It Up with Paula Shaw. We are delighted to have you with us, and today we are talking about anxiety. But first, may I say that we are being brought to you by Sherry Blair, the financial consultant who's really, really set on helping women. You know what? I'm going to start that over again. We're just going to end that and start fresh. Welcome back to Change It Up with Paula Shaw, being brought to you by Sherry Blair, the financial consultant who empowers women to grow beautiful financial futures. If you'd like to talk to Sherry about making your financial future more lovely, she can be reached at 619-997-0416 or at sherryblair.com. That's spelled CherryBlair.com. All right, if you're just joining us, you'll need to know that we are talking with my daughter, Erin Shaw, who is an author, an entrepreneur, and a singer who had quite a long battle with anxiety, and that's what we're talking about today, her experience with anxiety and her recovery from it. So, Erin, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so delighted that we're having a chance to really chronicle this whole journey, because as I shared earlier, I didn't know about a lot of it, because you were living in other cities and not really sharing with me how difficult it was. And I have a feeling a lot of people do that. They hide their anxiety either out of shame or fear or embarrassment, whatever.
Probably all of those things, especially if you're used to being if you're an independent person. It definitely feels a little belittling to feel like something else has power over you.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, that would be really difficult and shame-producing, and especially if you're an independent person or a person who's kind of strong in other areas of your life, it would feel, it would start shaking your confidence, that this crazy weird thing's happening, especially if it's accompanied with panic attacks and you don't know when they're going to strike. So that can be really difficult. But
it feels a little like you're being followed around by a monster.
Yeah. But your monster is gone now. You're on the other side. And just this last week, you had a fabulous experience. Would you like to share about that?
Yeah. So I moved back to Los Angeles from New Orleans in December of 2016 and felt very determined that now that I was back in this area, that music was something that I wanted to pursue again as performance work. I wanted to use my degree. I have a vocal performance degree from Chapman University's Conservatory of Music. I worked very hard for it, paid a lot of money for it, and I wanted to use it. And so I started looking into some different performance opportunities here and started writing a little original music that's still kind of I'm tinkering away at, as I'm also finishing my second novel, which is called Have Baggage Will Travel. And I'm also in the middle of adapting my first novel, Party Girl, A Modern Fairy Tale, to the screen as a screenplay for a television series. So I have a lot going on. In addition, you and I have our... Yes, I can't sit still, but you and I have our podcast, Bridges Podcast, which is online at bridgespodcast.com, although we've taken a little hiatus from it, but we're coming back soon. So I did some auditioning in the last year. I cut a demo last fall because I wanted to do some performance work, and I auditioned for a party band, wedding band, event band, and I was asked to join the band last month and was given 200 songs to learn in 3.5 weeks, which I did manage to do.
That would create some anxiety if you hadn't had any before.
Actually, it was so much fun for me to come back to it and to just dive in head first. I was so excited. I love music in any capacity, and so to come back to it, it was invigorating actually. And we had 2 performances last week. I performed on Thursday night at a corporate event, and then Saturday night at a wedding, and it was just so easy and fun, and it felt like it used to feel when I was pre-anxiety. I never was afraid of performing as a kid and teenager, so it was really great to come back to that. And
so even before the performance, no anxiety, no debilitating jitters. Wow.
Very, very calm, very excited.
And you had to drive a pretty good distance to get there, so obviously the driving thing is okay now.
All that is good. And so I'm very grateful to this band. We're called That Vibe, and our web address for anyone in the San Diego area who may be planning a wedding or an event, we're at thatvibeband.com, so check us out.
And that's THATVIBE, thatvibe.com.
Thatvibeband.com. B-A-N-D.
Okay, good.
Yeah, don't forget that.
So
otherwise, you may end up with some sort of other website that you might not want to be at.
And I want to tell everybody, I saw a video of the performance, and I sobbed. I could sob now just thinking about it. Not because she was terrible. She was so amazing, and I saw her doing what she was born to do, and it was a thrilling experience.
Oh, well, thank you.
So, all right, darling, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that helped you to get to this great place you're in right now from the nightmare of the anxiety.
Yeah, so there's different kinds of anxiety, as you mentioned. I sort of dealt with panic disorder. For me, I believe mine was situational. There are certain people who have anxiety that can stem from the chemistry of the brain,
Right.
which can be harder to deal with. If you have anxiety that is rooted in, stressful events in life or traumas or, that sort of thing, it's a little easier to kind of tackle those things once you pinpoint them and find ways to find balance with your triggers. Then you don't usually have as much anxiety. So again, while I didn't want to take medication, I am very much in favor of it for people who need it. And in fact, as you mentioned in your first segment about flying, the only anxiety I ever experience anymore is on airplanes. I'm not huge on flying. I know a lot of people don't really love to fly. It's not a great experience anymore. Mm-hmm. And I'm one of those people. I'm somewhat of a nervous flyer. So when I fly, I actually often will take a half a Xanax, which was something that I powwowed with my therapist about, and we decided that was completely fine because I wasn't needing medication in any other setting. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of the plan that we made, and that has made flying much more manageable to me because I love to travel, and I never wanted to close off that door to myself. I wanted to make sure that was something I could always do.
Yes.
So again, when anxiety limits your life, my personal feeling, and again, I can't speak for everybody, but my personal feeling is that it's important to make sure that you don't limit your ability to live, because life is short and we live in this beautiful world that should be seen and experienced fully. So whatever it takes. So there are a lot of mindfulness apps that you can download on your phone. I actually am not going to recommend any particular one because I haven't used them, but I have heard that there are many options of different apps that you can practice mindfulness techniques. My mom, Paula, can also point you to her YouTube channel where balanced breathing is one of the techniques that she does, that you do, Mom, with your clients. Mm-hmm. And that is a great technique. Any sort of breathing is so huge because one of the things we do when we have panic attacks is we start to hyperventilate.
Right.
So regulating your breathing is hugely important. So just practicing, it sounds so basic and like, duh, but practicing breathing is so important, which is why I think yoga is also a fantastic option for anyone with any kind of anxiety. Whether if you are somewhat agoraphobic or you don't like to leave your house or you have social anxiety, you don't like to be around strangers, you can download yoga videos on your phone even, or your, Apple TV or your Fire Stick, whatever you use. You can, your apps. There are many ways to do yoga and mindfulness techniques. So those are my favorites. Drink so much water and cut out caffeine.
Yes.
A lot of people think that they need that morning cup of coffee. I don't drink any coffee anymore, and I love coffee. I actually really miss coffee. I will sometimes have a little decaf coffee, but caffeine is really not good if you have anxiety. Mm-hmm. So switching to herbal tea.
Chamomile tea is supposed to be really good.
I prefer mint. I like ginger tea. You can mix those with a little almond milk and some turmeric and a little honey and create yourself like a beautiful little chai. There are lots of options other than coffee, so I fully recommend that. And the other thing is, and this is going to sound preachy, but your diet, making sure that you're giving your body good fuel. So, good whole grains, vegetables, lean meats if you eat meat, not a lot of sugar. Sugar's so terrible for us. I don't eat a lot of dairy. I don't eat a ton of grain. I just, I like to eat more cleanly. That's not to say you won't find me at In-N-Out drive-thru after my gig on Saturday, because you probably will. But, for the most part, really water intake, diet, mindfulness, meditation.
Exercise.
And then finally,
exercise.
And having boundaries with the people in your life is so huge. Even the people you love so much, or any time that you feel you need to take time for yourself or say no to something, it's really important to give yourself permission to do that and to not always be a people pleaser or a yes person or a doormat, because those can also come hand in hand with being anxious. So
Absolutely.
Those are my...
Oh, and those are excellent, and I would add to that just a couple of others. Omega-3s are supposed to be excellent for helping to calm anxiety. And other supplements. You know, you definitely want to be sure you're getting plenty of Bs and all of that. Yeah, so that your vitamins are definitely helping out. This was one that I read online. Two things I was surprised about. Sunlight is excellent for helping with anxiety and depression. So just get out in the sun. And I would add to that in a beautiful natural setting if you can. You know, the negative ions at the beach are great for you for balancing the energy. Lavender. You know, they even have lavender pillows that you can buy. So lavender, breathing lavender can be very calming. And this I loved, laughter. I'm a big believer in laughter. I mean, life isn't long enough to laugh enough as far as I'm concerned. If I were laughing every minute of life, that would be good for me. And I found out, doing a little research, it triggers the release of dopamine, which is a feel-good neurochemical. And by the way, Erin mentioned something about brain chemistry before, and I think this is an important point. If you are a person who's suffering from depression or anxiety, be sure and have your neurotransmitters checked, because I've had it happen with a couple of clients recently that they were in a spiraling anxiety and depression, terrible place, and they found out their neurotransmitters were extremely low. I want to do a whole show on that in the future, but just by taking some simple amino acids without any medications, they were able to turn the situation around. So I want to thank my beautiful daughter for sharing her experience and her wisdom with us today. I think we all learned a lot. And you were very gracious, Erin, and very helpful, I believe. So...
Oh, well, thank you. And I'm always happy to connect with anyone. My website is erin-shaw.com, so Erin-Shaw, ERIN-SHAW.com. Anyone, you know, who's listening would like to connect is welcome to do that. And I'm also on Twitter at Ms. Erin Shaw, MERINSHAW.
All righty. And thank you for joining us here on Change It Up Radio. You can hear us in San Diego at 7 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday evenings, and all major podcast platforms, including iTunes, Libsyn, Omni, and SoundCloud. We're on 15 terrestrial radio stations across the country, iHeartRadio, Blog Talk, and if you can't remember any of those, just ask Alexa. Also, please like our Change It Up Radio Facebook page and join the Change It Up Facebook group. We want to hear what you think about what we're talking about or what you'd like to hear about in future shows. And also join go to our Instagram page, Change It Up Radio. Thank you again. Always wonderful being with you, and we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye. All right, my darling.
Okie dokie.
We are done, and you were great. Muchas gracias. And let me thank the Facebook people, and we'll just end this one. Thank you all for being with us on this show. I hope it was helpful to you, and or maybe to someone you know who's dealing with anxiety. Please be sure to have them listen to it, and email us if you have any questions. We'd love to hear from you, or message us on that Facebook page. See you soon. Bye-bye. I'm going to go turn it off. Hang on a minute.